Kris, Green Sabre, Doom Telly time, episode 38. I will get better at remembering what fucking number I'm on at some point, but you know, it's lots of numbers. I mean, 38. Video time. Apologies again for missing a video last week. Something come up on my usual recording day, and like I say, I've got like one window of opportunity a week usually, so yeah, these will definitely not become more regular. And yeah, so I missed my window last week, unfortunately. So yeah, no video, but it gave me time to work on and just refine the video that I've been promising for fucking weeks. So today's video will be down with the kids, and essentially I'm going to try not to be too fucking bitchy with various things. I'll do my best. But yeah, essentially, down with the kids, it's about, I've done a similar-ish video about bands that made seismic changes to their sounds and whether that was a good or a bad thing. This is entirely a bad thing, but it's not like seismic changes. It's the key here is that it's bands that made fashionable, trendy choices to change their sound and their direction slightly, and how badly that came out at the end of it. So yeah, so I've gone with Down with the Kids because that's clearly why they were fucking doing it, most of these bands. But yeah, so that is the theme of the video. It's a video that Lee from Oaken Throne, shout out Lee, gave me the idea, God, a couple of months ago now, I think it was. And we've been, me and Lee behind the scenes have been sort of going through, what about this band? Like, oh yeah, that band, and so on and so forth. So yeah. So Lee's given me a great help compiling this video. But a lot of the spicier opinions will mainly be mine, certainly on a couple of bands and stuff like that. But yeah, we shared a collective spiciness on other particular bands. But I'll leave you to guess which ones they were. So yeah, but just before I crack on with the video, Green Sabre update. It is almost August, and at the end of August, Monday, Bank Holiday Monday, the 28th of August, we are playing the Pier Hat in Manchester with support to Froglord. We've got Acid Trip and Jeremiah AD opening up, then we're on, then Froglord. I can't wait. First gig in Manchester. I feel like I've been waiting for bastard ever to do this. So I'm really excited about this gig. It should be a fucking cracker as well because it's a belting lineup. Can't wait for it. We've been rehearsing. We didn't rehearse this weekend or today as it stands because I'm recording this on Sunday. We didn't rehearse tonight basically because Rossi's away, the bass player. Rehearsed last week and we've been fairly regular with it. We've got the set down. It's likely, for those of you that are sinners in the West Yorkshire area, it's the same set. You won't be missing anything. This is kind of like our tour set currently at the minute. But of course, Manchester and the West Coast people have not seen this set yet. So yeah, that's how we thought. Fuck it, stick with what we've got. We'll do that. We've got the same time. So the set's pretty much down. We could all but blindfold it, quite honestly, for the most part. So that's good. What we've also been rehearsing now in earnest is recording. We have all but finalised some dates. It was looking like back end of November, December. However, with a couple of budget constraints, because we want to make sure that we've got the fucking money before we get in, we're thinking of possibly pushing it into January. It certainly won't be any later than early January 24 anyway. We're going into the studio. We'll be recording 3 songs and possibly a little intro piece to go on it, just to add atmos. But that's what we're going on with. 2 are absolute definites that we know that we're going in there and recording, so we're nailing those as we go on. The third one is a choice of one of 3 songs currently, which is a nice problem to have, that we've got, that we're going to have to trim. It's rare that I've ever gone into a studio with a band where we've had to trim songs. Although, to be fair, on the Numb EP, we did trim one off of that, which still hasn't seen the light of day. So if you count that one rumbling along in the background, we've got 4 songs that we can choose from that's going to make up the 3rd track. We're 60 to 70% certain which track that's going to be, but there are another 2 that might rear their heads. So we're gonna just sort of rehearse them all up, and then we can decide which one we're going with. So that is the brief Green Sabre update. So without further ado, Let's crack on with the video, Down with the Kids. So, yeah, as I explained, it's a video about bands that made often fairly embarrassing musical choices. In order, I can't really think of the thinking behind it, because they're not all these are war crimes, as such, if you will. Because almost all of them are from bands that I have a tremendous amount of, well, actually, yeah, all of them. No, almost all of them are from bands that I have a tremendous amount of respect for. And for the most part of this top 10, because it's a top 10, they're forgivable crimes, because the band clearly came out the other side of it and thought, what the fuck was all that about? Let's just get back to what we do best. Others, it took slightly longer to get back to that train of thought. But yeah. So, like I say, musical war crimes. And I say this because it's difficult not to see them as sellouts. A very strong phrase. And for some of these bands, they were never sellouts, because let's face it, they didn't shift bucket loads of records from this change, for the most part. But bands, it just felt like they stepped out of what they do best for commercial reasons. Does that make sense? And like I say, with some of them, I really hate to even label that anthem, because they're fucking idols of mine. And I'm sure they had good reason for doing what they did. Probably out of boredom for a lot of it. But anyway, I'm digressing ever so slightly. What I'm going to do first, though, before I start my top 10, is the dishonourable mentions list. And these are ones that made fairly naff changes, but that haven't made the list. Now, some of these I kind of think, actually, maybe they should have been number 10, as opposed to what I've chosen for number 10. But anyway, so my dishonourable mentions list. Firstly, and this was one that Lee reminded me of, because, quite frankly, I'd forgotten all about this fucking record, and rightly so. Creator and the Renewal album. Now, before I insert image, I need to caveat this, that this is probably a VC faux pas, but for almost all of these records that I'm about to talk about, I do not have a physical copy of. As you can see behind me, I have a very minimal area for collection. Like I say, I live in a bag of crisps. And yeah, space is of a premium, and I just don't have the space to have a massive collection. Most of my CDs are boxed up in the loft. There's only a few that are out, and some that I had to dig out for this. That will be going back up there. But yeah, I don't have that. So ultimately, and I know this sounds very fucking shallow, but I don't have shit in my collection, because I've not got the room for shite. If it's awful, it goes. Or it goes in loft if it's a CD version. So I don't have a physical copy of most of these albums, so my apologies, but you're going to get lots of image inserted moments. So yeah, sorry, but you'll have to bear with me. I don't have room for shite in the collection. So yeah, first dishonourable mention was Creator with the Renewal album, image inserted. I don't really know the thinking behind it. It was sort of, Millie tried to go for a kind of clean vocal where he just sounds like, I don't know, that he's got some kind of head cold and that he's straining for a shit. I don't really know what the vocal style was, but it was bad. And it kind of, it's one of them where I think a band that I'm going to mention shortly is to blame for a lot of this musical shift. But we'll go into that in greater detail. So dishonourable mention 1, Creator with that fucking awful Renewal album. Dishonourable mention number 2, Morbid Angel. Now, there is a school of thought that there should be a couple of Morbid Angel albums that make this list, but the one that I particularly wanted to highlight was, let me try and remember the pronunciation, Illud Divinum Insanus, or whatever it was. But it was that ill-fated industrial load of fucking nonsense that they came out with around, was it like 2011, 2012, or 2010, whenever it was. It's just fucking nonsense. Now, I will say that on Gateways to Annihilation and on Domination, is it? Yeah. That's a great album. There are hints of this industrial kind of feature beginning to become a feature of what they do. But this one just sort of goes all out, and it's a mess of a record, and I don't like it. And it's almost like, again, you've got a cleaner vocal feel to it in patches, and it's just fucking garbage. So, but like Creator, A Morbid Angel, they clearly saw that that was a fucking stupid idea and got back on track the album afterwards. So, not too bad a crime. Reanimator, British thrash legends Reanimator, who did some fucking cracking albums. I'm talking about that ill-fated load of funk nonsense, though, that they got. Basically, Mordred and Suicidal, like Infectious Grooves and that kind of stuff, had all become a bit of a thing, and they just leapt on that, and it just wasn't good. So, yeah, the least said about that, the better, but Reanimator's fucking funk era. Benediction, this was another one that I'd fucking forgotten about, but the Grind Bastard album, just really, it's one of them where I don't know, I could be doing a disservice to them as a band, but I wonder if they just wish that that album would fucking go away and that they could bury it somewhere. That it was when the band I'm about to mention next, that whole groove, death, groove, thrash, groove thing became popular, and I don't really know if that whole groove thing has stood the test of time particularly well. For me personally, I should caveat that. But yeah, it was that kind of awful, not new metal, but more a Pantera influence that came into it. And it's just a fucking bad record overall. And there's a fucking dreadful Anti-Nowhere League cover at the end of it as well, if I remember rightly. The Anti-Nowhere League song's class, by the way. This is not a good version of it. But anyway, yeah, so Grind Bastard, Benediction, dishonourable mention. The dishonourable mention, and that I'm going to go to now, and I may be thinking that they should have been in the top 10 as opposed to a band that did make it into the top 10. Pantera. Now, hold your thoughts. Just careful with the pickaxes and fucking burning sticks there, guys. But Pantera, fucking hair metal. I did some fairly dreadful records, personally, like the Power Metal or whatever it was called, and the other fucking one, with the scary panther on the front of it. I love Vulgar Display of Power. I love it. And I really like Cowboys from Hell, but I do feel that Cowboys is a slightly overrated record. Gasp, horror. But Vulgar is a fucking legendary album. No question about that. Embarrassing. Pantera tried to be born again hard. They went from hair metal to fucking thrash, extreme thrash and blah blah and all that kind of stuff overnight, in the hope that no one would fucking notice all those fucking all that hairspray that had gone on beforehand. And it's like, no, what's all that? Basically, they toured with Exorder and thought, oh, let's do this instead, lads, and ran with it. Now, don't get me wrong, they were fucking pioneers at that. Southern American groove, thrash, death, whatever you want to fucking call it, whatever it was. They were the pioneers at that. And at Vulgar Display of Power, they absolutely fucking nailed it. But that sound that they created, which they did, regardless of whether you like them or whether you don't, they did create a sound and a subgenre almost of their own. So you have to doff your cap to that. But they created a lot of fucking monsters through that. And albums that I'm going to mention shortly, directly because of that fucking sound that they created. Just really bad impressions of it. And the Benediction one that I just mentioned. So, dishonourable mentions. But Pantera, I feel like in hindsight, maybe should have made this list because they're responsible for a lot of this fucking nonsense. But indirectly. So let's get to the top 10. And my first war crime, like I say, I don't have the album that I'm going to talk about, but I'm talking about My Dying Bride. And war crime's a strong term because the album that I'm talking about, I've got, here's a classic of theirs. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you a classic of this band and then, like, insert image of the war crime that I'm talking about. There's a classic of theirs. This album is the one I'm talking about. 34.788%. I don't understand this record. There's one good track on it, and I can't remember the fucking name of it now. But that track is really good. And there's a couple of other moments. It's kind of experimental to the point of... It's like a schizophrenic shift. So, like, where did that come from? Because it was unlike... You'd had no hints of this coming either, I wouldn't say. It was just a really odd choice. And I suspect the band probably think the same as well, that it was... But, it's an artistic fucking expression. And And it would be, well, I probably will pick up a copy of it at some point, provided it's cheap enough, because, yeah, but to finish my Bride collection. But it was just a really odd shift. But they're my number 10, because it was such a weird, and it did feel like it was slightly, as a way, I don't know whether it was company push, because of course Music for Nations were fucking hanging around Peaceville at the time, weren't they? And yeah, whether it was the kind of company push, you need to be more relevant with kids, or blah, blah. But whatever happened, they very, very quickly got back on track after it. So, yeah, I will let them off. But, yeah, number 10, My Dying Bride with 34.788%. My number 9 was a band that most people will have forgotten about. And that I think they ended up forgotten about because of this fucking change that they made. Here's a classic bit from them. Morgoth. This is an absolutely fucking breathtaking EP. Just classic straight up. Were they Swiss or Austrian or something like that? I feel, yeah, anyway, Austrian, whatever they were. This is fucking majestical. Absolutely brilliant. The album that kind of followed this as well is really, really good. The album that I'm talking about, The War Crime, is, let me remember the name of it, Feel Sorry for the Fanatic, image inserted. Now, I think there's a telltale with this album title, because as it's supposed to be, feel sorry for our fanatical fans that have put up with us to this point, only to have this fucking shat out at them. But it's just, it's a complete change of tact, and this was more of a change of tact. I don't know whether they ever, I don't profess to know what happened after this, because as soon as I heard this album, I just switched off and was not interested anymore. I did listen to it a couple of times, and I had it on CD at a point. I'm fucking sure I did. I can't find it now. If I did, it might have been one of them that went in the fucking bin, or went to a chazzer. Anyway, whichever it was. They clearly, where I'll let them off and why they're only at my number 9, is that they clearly believed in this choice. Now, I'm not saying that all the other bands didn't believe in the choice that they made, but this, it felt like they kind of, no, we're not really into that death metal thing anymore. We're into this as a band, so this is what we like, this is what we want to play. So, and I can understand that from a musical perspective, where kind of, if ever you've slightly changed tact with a band, people are like, oh, why don't you play the old stuff? Well, because we're fucking bored stupid of it. And it might have been something like that. You know, it's, bands have to have that creative art where they can move on from stuff. That's just a natural course of being in a band. That's what happens. And Green Sabre's sound is evolving. But anyway, that's just another fucking video. But yeah, it just felt like it, because the industrial thing was popular. It just felt like a kind of, oh, Nine Inch Nails and Ministry are quite big. Let's do that fucking thing. And it just didn't work for me, no. So, yeah, number 9. Number 8. Now, this isn't a specific record. It's a lot of records. And I've got friends that will probably punch me in the stomach for even saying a bad word about this band. And it does feel wrong saying a bad word about this band, but I just can't get with what was it, a decade or more of this nonsense. The band I'm talking about is this band. Here is a fucking gem of theirs. Gothic. This is the red vinyl. Was it a reissue originally? It's same year, but yeah, the red vinyl press. Oh, what a record. This is the only one I've got of this. I'd like this on a actual sleeve version of it, but this is the original press picture disc of Lost Paradise. Another fucking monster of a record. Gets largely forgotten in their back catalogue, and I think that's Death Doom Splendor. This album, where they clearly have been listening to a lot of Trouble before they went in the studio, and you can hear it in fucking spades on this record. Majestic album. And for me, the final majestic album that they did up to a point, Icon. Can't wait to see this at the end of the year in Bradford, by the way. Monstrous album. A sign of things to come on here, yes, but I think they rein it in enough for this to work magnificently as a continuation of Shades of God with miles better production. But anyway, the albums I'm talking about are everything, and I know this is going to make people sit there saying, you've lost it, Kris, you've lost it, but including Draconian Times, right the way up to the album Faith Divides Us, Death Unites Us, which is the album where, for me personally, they finally got back on track. It's not entirely brilliant, but there's some gems on that Faith Divides Us album. But yeah, that whole Draconian period onwards, it felt like they swallowed several Metallica pills and decided that, okay, we've done the extreme stuff, like Metallica's first 4 records and all that. Let's do our own. I'm not saying that they went Black Album, but Draconian Times feels like their Black Album for me. And I can't warm to it, because it just feels... the first track I heard was, like most of the people listened to that when it came out, was they released, was it called The Last Time? Hearts Beating. And I just remember just thinking, I don't like this at all. I don't like it. Now, whether it was that initial impression that made me then go in with a slightly more guarded approach to it, but anyway, I did not fucking like it. And then there's maybe 1 or 2 tracks on that album that I don't have it in the collection, even on CD. I never did. It was one of them where the last thing I bought of theirs was the Seals the Sense EP. Well, the B-side of that, I can't remember the fucking name of it now, but is it called Sweetness? There's a B-side on the Seals the Sense EP. And I fucking love that. And that I thought, oh, cool. Is this the direction that they're going in? No, it won't. I just did not, and I still cannot quite get my head around Draconian Times. I tried to revisit it when, a few years ago, they did the Splatter reissues of it. It was the 25th anniversary or whatever it were. And I tried to revisit it, and I kind of, at first I found a bit of a newfound respect for it, thinking, oh, actually, I sort of get very quickly tired of it, and I just don't fucking like it. Anyway, it just feels slightly sellout to me. Feels like them thinking, right, this is our Metallica arc that we're going through now. And then after that, there was just a lot of albums that just felt full goth rock, goth metal. I know that was where they came from and what they were into. But for me, the albums that followed that for a while should have been a side project and not under the Paradise Lost name. That is just my personal opinion, though. They came, like I say, they came back to it in style. They really did. Like I say, the Faith Divides Us album, and then later on you have Medusa and Obsidian, the latest one, that are a really good return to form. They've never recaptured that magic of the early years, personally, but sensational return to form. And I cannot wait to fucking see him at St George's Hall in Bradford in December. So yeah. Paradise Lost, my number 8. And it just feels wrong having a go at them. But yeah, I just couldn't warm to a large period of their back catalogue. My number 7. And this band, I don't know if they were ever classic for me in my eyes, but this album is. Death Shall Rise, Cancer. Now, this is my favourite because it's got one of my favourite metal guitarists of all time on it, James Murphy. And James Murphy, often, for me, if he was on an album, it's the best one. I love how he solos, I do. I've got friends that can solo that say that sort of, oh, he's just a bit of a one-trick pony. I don't care, I fucking love how he sounds. But, yeah, this masterpiece, fucking hell. Now, they didn't immediately follow it, because there's a record after this, isn't there? The album that I'm talking about is this fucking dog turd. And it's called Black Faith. I mentioned Pantera earlier. It feels like the Pantera hooks are all over this fucking one, where they've tried to go slightly groove again, and it don't work. It don't work. It's bad. And like I say, I don't know if I'd ever call Cancer classic death metal. That album would probably, if I did a classic death metal top 20, I suspect that album would be in it. In fact, it won't be in it. There's no suspicion about it. But Black Faith is just horseshit. And a really bad, I mean, did they split up after Black Faith? Again, it was one of them where I think I kind of lost interest in them to a point. And then when Black Faith come out, I remember hearing it via a friend and just like, oh, all right, that's what they're doing now, is it? And yeah, I never owned it, and I won't be owning it either, so that's why it's an image. But yeah, that was my number 7, Cancer, Black Faith. Shite. Okay, my number 6, and again, not a specific album as such, more an era. I'm talking about one of my favourite bands of all time, The Misfits. This is a reissue of Walk Among Us. This is an original. This is the fucking... Actually, I've got 2 copies of this, and I bet I've dug out the wrong one. But you know, one that's like a sort of brown vinyl. It's a sort of see-through brownie. Yeah, that is the one. Yeah, you have to hold it up to the light, so I won't be able to... But yeah, you hold it up to the light, it's like brown. So yeah, fucking the Glenn Danzig era of the Misfits were just one of the greatest bands ever. I wasn't there at the time, because when fucking Static Age, which is one that I really fucking want on vinyl, which I haven't got around to yet. I haven't got the CD of it yet, because I'm holding out for the vinyl, but I'll be holding out forever at this rate. But yeah, I wasn't there at the time. It was the band Metallica that got me into the Misfits, and thank you, Lars and James and Cliff and so on. But these, Static Age, Walk Among Us, Earth AD, Evil Life is great as well. And I've got a really nice fucking boot that's got most of the Beware single on the B side of it, which I should have dug out, but anyway. Majestic. I'm talking about everything after Glenn Danzig left, and in particular this monstrosity, insert image, American Psycho and onwards. What the Misfits and what Jerry in particular did to what was one of the arguably greatest ever hardcore / horror punk bands ever, probably the only hardcore / horror punk band that will go on the annals of fucking legend, by turning them into a fucking cheap Blink 182 or Green Day or whatever the fuck they've been listening to at the time. After that was unforgivable, and that is a war crime, and probably, to be honest, should have been higher up than number 6. But everything after Glenn Danzig left of the Misfits is horrendous, and that is scientific fact. That's not my opinion. So enough. It pains me just to talk about this. Another thing that pains me to talk about this, although I think there was a bit of deliberate fucking work here. But my number 5, here's a masterpiece. Morbid Tales, Celtic Frost. Finally got it in the collection a while back. What a fucking record. In a Megatherion, what a fucking record. Bits of Into the Pandemonium I quite like as well. The rot you can feel is setting in though for me personally on Into the Pandemonium. The album that I'm talking about is this. Cold Lake. I mean, fuck me. That is one of them where you think, did he get dropped on his head? Did like a fucking Marshall Stack fall on him on tour one day? I do not, and still do not, understand the thinking behind Cold Lake, other than it was Tom G. Warrior just deciding, I'm going to troll all my fans because I'm that way inclined. That's what it feels like. It's so much of a nonsensical move to hair metal. Like, do you know what was the first Celtic Frost song I ever heard? Cherry Orchard, off of that fucking dogshit album, Cold Lake. That was the first I ever heard of Celtic Frost. And then when I'd heard the older guys down the metal clubs and stuff like that talking about, oh, all that shit you're into, Celtic Frost influenced them. Like, are you insane? What, the Cherry Orchard band? Fuck off. It wasn't until somebody was like, no, listen to this. And they gave it, I think it was To Megatherium was the first thing that I heard. Which, no, I tell a lie. The Emperor, the fucking EP that's got Circle of Tyrants on it anyway. I was really I heard Circle of the Tyrants before, I bet it was only like a month or two, but before Obituary covered it. And it was Obituary's cover that made me think, oh, okay, right, I'm going to dive a bit more into this band and so on. Yeah, so, but Cold Lake is just a fucking abomination and truly a war crime. So, yeah, Celtic Frost, Cold Lake, what the fuck. My number 4, and a band that were never really my favourite band, even of the big 4. They just kind of, I think I preferred Anthrax. No, that's a lie, actually. I think I preferred Anthrax to a point, but I think this band were clearly better songwriters. I've pulled this one out. This is a repress, unfortunately. I did used to have the original. I had it signed as well. But Dave Mustaine, or was it Dave Ellison? One of the Daves fucking rubbed off. Yeah, it must have been in a shitty fucking marker and it came right off the front. So I think it was Mustaine. I remember thinking, oh, fuck, that's the valuable one gone. But anyway, well, actually, you could argue that Nick Menzies is probably the most valuable on there now. But anyway, yeah, it's a reissue of their last great record. Killing Is My Business is alright, but really rough around the edges. I don't mind it. But Peace Sells, So Far So Good So What, Rust in Peace are absolute fucking monsters. Classics. Classic records. And I won't be told otherwise, but this is a fucking masterpiece. I'm talking about what they followed it with. And I did used to have this one. I'm talking about sort of 2 albums. And Countdown to Extinction, I did used to have this on CD. I haven't got it anymore. I think I sold it to someone. Anyway. And the one that followed it is the worst offender for me, Euthanasia. Again, the band Metallica and their career arc just seemed to make other bands think, oh shit, we need some of that. We need to start doing that. And everyone just kind of started looking better dressed, took more time on their haircuts. And they were just all, this was the kind of the blue jeans, white shirt, flowing locks, white shirt unbuttoned to about here, flowing locks era of Megadeth that I just cannot fucking get with at all. And they never returned after that. It just felt like Dave Mustaine's voice that was always a hard sell for me. I think the best album of Dave Mustaine's voice is So Far So Good So What. Because he just sounds... there's a bit more metal about him on that record anyway. I'm not here reviewing Megadeth records. But Countdown to Extinction, I mean, that's where that fucking voice started coming in. And it never left us, sadly. So yeah, I'm talking about predominantly the era of Megadeth that I can't fucking stand. It was bad. And it was a way of them becoming more commercially viable. I felt that they kind of, not sold out, because it's a strong word, but they certainly went, a lot of the edge, a lot of the attack went out of their material at that point, and I don't fucking like it. So, my number 3, and I have nothing to show you, not even the fucking good one, which I am positive is but I feel like there's another box of CDs that I've not quite found yet in the loft, because there's a few around the middle part of my collection that aren't there. I'm talking about the band Machine Head. Now, their first album, Burn My Eyes, there we are, image inserted, is a stone cold classic from that era. Has it aged well? Probably not particularly, but it is a classic of that era. It's just you're on the cusp of that new metal wave. Korn came not long after it, didn't they? I think. And you had Pantera doing the rounds at that time. And sort of, you've got that new metal, groove metal kind of melting pot that was happening around then. On that Burn My Eyes tour, I saw them at it's now the O2 Academy in Leeds. It was called the Town and Country. And I saw them supporting Slayer on the Divine Intervention tour there. And I have to say, they blew Slayer away that night. They were so heavy. It was just fucking monumental live performance. And that Burn My Eyes, I fucking adored that record for a bit. That was all about me. The problem that I have is sort of everything after that, where I'm partly, and this is very shallow of me, but I've never warmed to Rob Flynn. I think I don't find him genuine. I feel that he's a bit of a contrived showman, and everything's for sort of, I mean, talking about Pantera, you know, the fucking ill-fated white power nonsense with Phil Anselmo and all that kind of thing. Rob Flynn was the one that felt that he had to do a fucking big video about, I've always known this about this guy and all that, and sort of, and it just, Rob Flynn and people like him are the kind of reason why those of a socialist ilk politically lose any traction when you've got people like them just fucking banging on about, have you thought of this? And you didn't think of that, did you? And what about that? And it just, oh, fuck off, Rob. And it just, personally, yeah, I find his character all a bit make-believe. I just find that a lot of posturing for show. And that came into the band. Now, what's the album called that followed Burn My Eyes? The more things changed, the rock was setting in on that. You can hear more new, more groove. And it's where, I don't know, Rob sort of, the haircut changed around that time as well, didn't it? And he sort of fancies himself as, there's a lot of that going on. Biohazard were responsible for a lot of this fucking nonsense as well. So they maybe should have come into this slightly. Where, yeah, a lot of this posturing on the stage. Look how fucking hard I am. Let's talk about Reservoir Dogs and where all these, you know, and gun crimes and blah, blah. Anyway, I'm fucking going off the beaten track. Machine Head sold out to new metal. Now, you could argue that it never really changed that much. And there's the album The Burning Red that followed it and stuff. And no, the Burn My Eyes is the only good record that band have ever fucking released. The rest of it is tosh. And that's why they're my number 3. Number 2, I'm going to show you a classic by them. I have all the classics by these. Original Press, Rain in Blood. Classic. I'm talking about, of course, Diabolus. Diabolus in Music. The new metal album that they did. And it's not, I think that's slightly unfair because it's not a new metal album. There are hints of new metal. But where it just grates on me is because it's just not very good. And Kerry King has almost admitted that, yeah, they were trying to be a bit trendier and a bit more following the modern trends. And it just... Where it grates is because Slayer, throughout their entire career, never, ever fucking broke from the mould that they were. You could argue that it would have been nice to see a few more breaks from the mould, but Slayer did what Slayer do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that's what they did. So that's why that album was a step... I prefer that album of punk covers to Diabolus. Yeah, there are some... like some of the Minor Threat stuff that I have issues with on that Punk Covers album. But anyway, but that Punk Covers album, Undisputed Attitude, is it? Yeah, is a vastly superior record to Diabolus in Musica. It is diabolical, so it's aptly titled. And since I'm already at fucking 36 minutes, I'm not talking about it anymore. That's why it's my number 2, though. Everyone knows about it. My number 1 is for Multiple Crimes Against Humanity. And I think you all know where I'm going with this. Metallica. Now, the Multiple Crimes started with, personally, this piece of shit. Load. Now, I know this was some people's entry point, but I struggled personally when the Black Album came out. I remember feeling slightly cheated by it, like, oh, what have they done? Why have they done this? And then you live with it and you think, well, actually, the songs are pretty well constructed. They're quite good songs. It's produced magnificently. And I warmed to it. Bri, the drummer, it was that turned me on to it. It's like, no, listen to it. Listen to that. And the sort of... And I feel the Black Album is a decent record and should just about make the canon of classics. It gets better as it goes on for me. Everyone will sort of tell you about the Black Album. Oh, the hits are down one end. Yeah, get to the other end. That's where the good stuff is. And so, yeah, the Black Album warmed on me. This one never has. Apart from one song that I think is one of Metallica's untapped gems. And I'm talking about the track Hero of the Day on the A-side. Magnificent tune. And I wish they'd play that more live. Because it's brilliant. It's the best thing on here. By a fucking country mile. It just felt contrived and I mean, fucking look at them. It's contrived and it's sellout. They clearly went down the megabucks route. They decided that they weren't a thrash band anymore. They were a rock band. You know, as soon as a band starts, hey, we're not metal, we're not this, we're rock and roll. As soon as they start talking like that, they switch off to them. Don't forget your fucking roots, people. Don't forget where you came from. Stop. I know you make musical choices and stuff like that, but stop pretending to be something that you're not. And this is a real... I cannot... It's... As I was saying about Machine Head, this is not genuine for me. This feels like a contrived, deliberate move, and that's why it's my number 1. Now, this is the first Offender. The second Offender, Reload, is the only Metallica... Actually, I tell a lie. The only Metallica besides the new one, which I don't own yet, and probably won't. But this one that... Reload... I don't own, and I've never owned, and I don't profess to own, because it's got one of Metallica's worst songs ever on there, and that's the one with fucking Marianne Faithfull on it, The Memory Remains. Just horrendous fucking song. It's nonsense. And again, it's a further disappearing up their own arse that you can see is going on. And it's a sellout. Again, sellout's a strong word, but it is a sellout, and they sold out for reasons unknown, because they must have made the fucking money at that point. And they can't, I don't know, can they really have been happy doing this shit? But, so those two are the main offenders. There is another war crime, which we all know about. I paid good money for this as well. I bought it when it come out. And I remember loving it for about 2 days. Thinking, oh, the Born Again Hard, this is fabulous. This is the one with the live DVD. There's the rehearsal DVD on it, which is the best thing on here. There's some alright songs on here, and there's some great riffs. The drum production is just, yeah, I won't go into it because everyone knows how fucking terrible it is. The songs are too long because there's no solo breaks on it. They clearly kind of thought, no, look, we're going new metal. And that's why it's a crime. They've tried to reinvent themselves as new metal, and it's embarrassing to a sense. Now, they step away from it enough at points. Like, All Within My Hands is a great song. St. Anger, Frantic, they're alright. Which one is it? Is it Some Kind of Monster? There's another one on here that's alright. I quite like it. I can't remember. I've not listened to it in years. But this is another fucking crime. The other one, which I forgot to fucking dig out, which is another crime, but it's not a bad album. Death Magnetic, and I'm calling it a crime because it's like they tried to go back to the good old days and hope that we'd forget all the shit that came before it. But yeah, for multiple crimes, Metallica are culprits, and that is why they're my number one. So yeah, down with the kids. War crimes in music, whatever we want to call it. I'll think of a catchier title when it goes to air. But yeah, that's my top 10 and my dishonourable mentions. I'm sure you've all got your own thoughts on this. And like I say, I was hoping not to go too hard on certain bands, but I just can't help it at times when I get in the zone. So apologies. So like I say, with My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost on this list, I really don't ever want to say bad things about them. And I think for the most part, I reined it in. So yeah, they're great bands and heroes of mine. So that's my list. Don't know what next week's video's going to be about, but there will be another one next week. I'll get back on track and we'll go from there. So thanks for watching. Like and subscribe as always, and I will see you next time. So long, folks.